I'm here in Hereford near the Welsh border, and I'm going to take in a few interesting buildings. We've got some great cathedrals and churches in the UK. We all know the names of the famous architects like Wren and Pugin and so on, but nobody knows the names of the people that built them, because when they say this church was built by Wren, that always jars with me slightly, because he didn't build anything. He wasn't a bricklayer or a carpenter. He did some drawings, and the horny-handed sons of toil did the hard graft. And they've been kind of lost to history. They're invisible, and the only place that we can find any trace of them is in the work that they did. So I'm going to go and have a look at a few things and get a glimpse of the brilliant craftsmen that were around in those days. So this is sandstone, and actually this is nice in here, but the exterior stuff I'm not over keen on, the kind of colour of it. That aside, if you look at this, it's all been milled all the way round, so they shaped this just by sawing it all the way, and it's quite workable as a stone, but surprisingly for sandstone, pretty durable as well. So this is the tomb of Sir Richard Pembridge. He fought at the Battle of Crécy, which was a fantastic battle in France down near the Somme, and the British beat the French there, and it's a great account. If you've never read it, read it, because you'll see exactly how we, outnumbered by the French, managed to prevail. Anyway, this guy fought there, and his leg has been damaged. It wasn't actually damaged in battle, it was damaged in the 17th century, because he's lying here under here. This is an alabaster tomb, so this would have been pure white when it was originally done, and the leg, as you can see, was knocked off. What happened then is that they thought, oh, we can't leave the poor bloke with one leg, and they gave him a wooden leg, which is down here. Not a bad job, but it wouldn't fool you if you were looking for the original. So what they did is that somebody donated some money, and they had a new alabaster leg made to go on here, and you can see the join there, quite a nifty little join there, but look, the poor guy's lost a bit of his foot. So it seems this isn't the most durable of materials for doing it, but he's lasted a long time, hasn't he? This is 1375 he died, which is a while ago, even by my standards. So we couldn't come to Hereford without mentioning the SAS, because it is the home of the SAS famously, and this is a memorial to the guys that have died in the SAS. There's a little logo down the bottom here, a motto if you like, always a little further. One of the big problems you've got in modernising any building is that you can't start chasing the walls out to put the electrics in, and that has caused a lot of problems in listed buildings, because they're trying to put in some modern facilities. I mean, where are you going to plug in your toaster if you don't have a socket? But here you can see what they've done is they've just taken a brave option. They haven't tried to disguise it. They've just put in a surface mounted socket and a bit of pyro cable here. This is all fireproof cable basically, in case the building blows down. And then here, what have they done there? They tacked something else along there anyway. But yeah, they've done a good job, haven't they? And this would be a ring main, which a lot of electricians don't like ring mains. They want radials everywhere. So what I'm saying about the work and the workmen being hidden from view is it's always the way, isn't it? They just want to hide everything away. And this screen that they've put around here is lovely, but what's it actually hiding? Let's have a look. All the electrics in there, all the things that nobody wants to see. And I'm sure that the guy who put those in did a really nice job of putting the cables in straight and everything else. Absolutely beautiful. And then they go and hide it away. This is fantastic, isn't it? My goodness. This is actually a heater, gas-fired heater. It wouldn't glow red hot. You can see the convection fins on it. It would have been giving out heat. You can see they've got a door here, and then inside there, fire brick, basically. And that all would have been heated going up through the flue here. There's a draft stabiliser there. It was made by the London Warming, Ventilating and Heating Company. So they cast these probably down in London at one of the foundries. Apart from standing close to it and feeling the heat coming off it, it wouldn't have actually done an awful lot to heat the poor people in the pews, if you like, because the roof, the ceilings are so high that this convection would have just gone up, and it would have been lovely and toasty warm up there if you were a pigeon or something. you probably couldn't get round this for vicars. They always used to say that, you can't get near the fire for vicars, or warming their backsides. Do you know what? I'm just wondering about this little basin that went round the bottom of it, and whether they actually put water in there and that evaporated and it was kind of steam. It was more than just dry air. I don't know, but I can't imagine what else that little trough would have been doing, really. So maybe somebody did chuck a watering can of water in there every so often just to warm it up, because you know what happens, it's like in a sauna, you know, you've got that dry air, you put a bit of water on a sauna and nobody can stay in there. Maybe that's what they did to get rid of them. The Stanbury Chapel. Oh my goodness, look at this. What a fantastic bit of work. Look at those fan arches. Just amazing, isn't it? And people just coming in for a little quiet prayer. You're kind of solidifying something, you know, a story of Christianity. Okay, that's good, but until you actually give people something solid that they can see and touch, those stories, they wouldn't have held the people in the way they did. And when they saw these buildings, they just went, it must be true, it must be God. You know, if these people can create this, then, you know, this was just beyond anything they'd ever imagined. So there's a serious purpose to all this stuff, really, isn't there? We know that the Battle of Hastings and the Normans came, and with the Normans came this fantastic influx of craftsmen. They taught them how to build. Now, over the years, I've always come into churches to have a look at the craftsmanship. I'm not the slightest bit religious, but this is, you know, almost like thank goodness that there were people who believed in it, and there were people who were willing to go to these lengths to leave these buildings. You can see these lovely lion's head carvings, can't you? And they've even got a little tongue in there. I think they've inserted that. I think that's a bit of metal that's been put inside there. But looking at the shape of these would have been on the outside of the church. They would have been upright. They're a corbel, basically. They've been moved. So this is Norman,
yes,
and this is on a different scale, isn't it? So the old Saxon.
Yes, the Saxon one was between here and the river,
which is a lot more modest.
It'd be much smaller.
And that's gone.
Yeah, that's gone. And then they've got this amazing Norman, and it's quite extraordinary. Well, yes, we're amazed, but people, you know, when it was built, coming in from the country, when they're probably living in sort of bottle huts, and suddenly see this huge building, and probably a lot of colour on the outside as well as colour on the inside. Because there would have been a lot of colour, you know, things like the pillars were clear.
And even seeing the stained glass. I mean, if you've never seen that before in your life, that's
the size, sheer size of it.
The largest building.
That huge tower, and there was a spire at one time.
And it fell down, didn't
it? Yes, it did.
On Easter Monday.
No, that was this bit that fell out.
Oh, was it? But there was a tower there, wasn't there?
There were two, I think.
Yeah, and they fell down. One of them collapsed.
The whole lot fell out.
Yeah. So they didn't get everything right, did they?
No.
Back to the drawing board. No, but you know, it was ambitious, wasn't it? I mean, no computers, no structural engineers.
All they had was, you know, wooden scaffolding tied together.
Yeah.
And a pulley system. Block and tackle. That's it.
And a lot of labour, a lot of men.
And the same implements as we use now for the stone. The stonemasons use the same implements as they used.
Do they really? We're looking to get hold of a stonemason. There was one working here, wasn't there, in residence somewhere?
Yes, well, their office is just around the corner.
Is it?
Yeah.
Do you think we could go and knock on their door and see if there's anybody around?
There might be someone there.
Brilliant.
Yeah, go outside and go past the
Lovely.
porch and just there.
Now this is absolutely brilliant, because years ago when they built this building, the stonemasons and everybody else would have been hidden away. Nobody wanted to see them working. But now this is the stonemason's yard. This is the resident stonemason, whose name is Simon, and we had hoped to talk to him and get a bit of footage of him working, because you can see he's working on all kinds of little projects here. It's a job for life doing this, isn't it? And if you were his apprentice, you'd be learning some brilliant stuff. So hopefully we'll get hold of him, but if not, then it's great just to see this, isn't it? See where he's working. Now, I mentioned the stonework already, but the school of Herefordshire stonemasons were revered, and they worked all around this area. And one of the things that they did is, if you see around all these cathedrals, all these old buildings, you've got grotesques, you've got little faces and animals poking out from all around. They're working on this little one down here, which is just a hedgehog, but they put all kinds of animals and mythical beasts into the building, and it was a tradition that went way back to the Celts, and all sorts of other people used to do this thing, and what they were doing was telling stories. Now you can see a little bit of it here, but I'm going to take you down the road, another church where you'll see the finest example of exactly what I'm talking about. If you're here, it's worth nipping down the road. So down the road from the cathedral is All Saints Church, and as beautiful a church as it is, they've actually improved it by putting a cafe in it. What they've done is built a mezzanine floor across the top here, and that mezzanine floor obviously was never there in the original building, so nobody ever got up high. And I want to show you something that's been revealed since people have got up to eye level. They can see something really cheeky, which just gives us an indication of the people that built this and their sense of humour. So come this way. This area here would have been in the dark. There weren't any spotlights up here. Nobody could ever get up here. So the wood carvers who were putting all the grotesques in the end of the beams, look what they did here. So you can see that all the other carvings are perfectly conventional. It's just that one, and we've got to think about the risk that that wood carver took in doing that, obviously not sanctioned by the church. Now, timber roofs come in a lot of different shapes and styles, and in churches and old buildings they wanted to have an open vaulted ceiling, that kind of thing. They didn't want it closed in. They wanted to get as much height as they could into a building. So this is what they've done here, and you can clearly see this roof has been built by people who built boats. There's a real crossover between boat builders and people building church roofs. I think really in the early days, when they were building a church and they got to the roof, they probably got the local boat builder down and he put the roof on for them. And these look like oak beams. One of the things about oak is that you shouldn't use metal fastenings because the acidic oak will corrode the metal fasteners. So what they've used here all the way along is dowels. They can just take a section out and repair it. They don't even need to jack the roof up because there are so many rafters in here that it's supported all the way along. If this were a boat, it would be a very strong one. And so you can see all the way along here these Gothic arches, beautifully done in the stonework. The stonemasons around here were in a class of their own. They were really, really good. The Gothic arch brings the load directly vertically down onto the pillars, so they don't need to buttress it in quite the same way as they did with the Roman arch. Those pillars, by the way, are very likely to be completely hollow. They found that actually when they built them like that they were stronger and more rigid than building a solid one even. Now, long before we had things like television, films, photographs, stained glass was a way of telling stories. And you can see this is called All Saints Church. And you can see the cathedral, the church, and you can also see different saints, all saints in fact. Now, this is the best in the West. Obviously that's referring to the beer, but here, this has got to be the worst in the West, referring to the plumbing. I mean, my goodness, what a mess.
I didn't realise you'd done any work in Hereford.
Yeah, this is some of my finest work. So now we're going down to Kilpeck, which is about 4 miles outside Hereford, and it's Kilpeck. That sounds like a chicken slaughterhouse, doesn't it? But no, we're going there to see the carving, and I think the subject matter might surprise you, especially for a church. So what we have here in this little country church is the Kilpeck carvings, and they're quite remarkable because they kind of follow a Saxon Norman tradition, and what they depict here It's a tradition which has contained Vikings, Celts, all kinds of people, even the Spanish are in here. You know, basically as people travelled across Europe and they brought their influences to bear. So if you look here, you've got knights, you've got animals. Don't forget that the people coming to this church, many of them would have been illiterate, and so the way that they got their stories handed down through the ages was basically the medieval texts were called the bestiary or the beastery. I'm not sure which way you pronounce it, but what that contained is all these different allegorical tales, mainly moral tales. All the way around the arch there are different animals. Some of them existed, some of them didn't. There are snakes, there are goats' heads, basically grotesques, a lot of them. Oh, look, we've got birds all the way around the top of birds. Every single one of these would have meant something to the people years ago. They would have looked up there, seen that image and known the story that it went with. But the carving is quite exceptional. It's done in this sandstone, which luckily is very durable. It hasn't really suffered too much over the years. They weren't content with stopping there. If you walk all the way around the church and look at the eaves, you will see upside down pigs, lions. Oh, there's a rabbit and a dog there. That's quite nice, isn't it? Now our cameraman has been a bit silly, he's juvenile, but this is basically a large-breasted lady, I think, holding open a vulva for the world to see. Ye who enter in despair. So that sculpture up there is known as Sheen and the Gig, and if you've ever been to Ireland you'll see that. You go around there, there's lots of that. It's a tradition. Now this church was actually destroyed by a marauding mob of Welsh and Irish coming across, and they completely flattened it, so it was rebuilt at some point in the past. But it dates back, it's Saxon, it's Norman, so 1066 the Normans came over. We know the kind of age of it, but something that doesn't date from there is this little thing here. I've got to mention this because you know how much I like, if you watch Skill Builder regularly, you'll know how much I like a bit of rising damp. So what they've done here is they've put in some clay tubes basically, and the idea of those is that they draw moisture from around the area and the moisture evaporates through these holes. There was once an archway here, all the way over there and down there, and I think once again these buttresses have been added to reinforce the wall. Maybe they thought it was going to move out because of the load of the roof. But what we've got here, we've got that rounded Norman end. This is really their signature. That's how you tell a Norman church from other churches. It was by that rounded apse. And then this bit over here probably would have been a Saxon bit. They took any roofing material they could find, and if you go further down towards South Wales and Cornwall and so on, you get slate. But here you've got the local flagstone, if you like. You can see what they've done with this is that the courses diminish as it goes further up. They get smaller. That was quite a tricky thing to do those diminishing courses, because basically they had to select the material and go up and up and up, but keep the bond, and they've done it brilliantly there. Now I reckon probably every single one of those is pegged in with oak pegs over the timber battens. So if one of those falls down on your head, you're going to end up with an afternoon with the undertaker, as Fred Dibner said, so you may end up in this yard. And I could just make out the inscription here. Here lies the body of Roger Bisbee, who was fatally wounded by a frisbee. Age 82 years, that'd do.
That's all right. Yeah, gives you another day.
I'll take that. I've got another 2 years. Oh, blimey. It's quite modest. All the fancy carving is really outside. I mean, this isn't bad. Down here it has, look, there's a few knights of old, and here we've got various characters. I think they're all religious. He's carrying a text there. And up here they've got a little gallery, and you get a lot of these in Methodist churches actually, and the idea of them was that they were the cheap seats, they were really for the unwashed, and all the gentry, all the posh people, if you like, if there were such people here, they all sat down here, and the others had to sit up the top on those very uncomfortable seats. You can see that they're nowhere near as comfortable as those ones. This is just the original. It's just fantastic, isn't it? To give you some idea of what these allegorical tales were about, you know, with the animals, they talk about a stag here running up the vertical corbel, and they're saying in the bestiary or bestiary, deer by nature like to change their homeland, and for this reason they seek out new pastures, but they help each other along the journey. If they've got a river to cross or a great lake, they place their heads on the hindquarters of the deer in front, and they follow each other, rather like elephants do, if you like, when they grab each other's tails. And this way they're not hindered by their weight. So what they're saying is, really, pull together, you can overcome big obstacles if you just act like the deer and you all cooperate with each other. And this bit's interesting. It's saying that the fact that this is carved upside down might be an error by the sculptor. That's the chimney. It's still intact all the way around. That's actually a beautifully made chimney with those curved stones. And this castle was built by the Normans, and this was quite elaborate at one time. It had, you know, a couple of fireplaces, a hall and so on. And it's a motte and bailey, so if you look down there you can see all the way around. Over there is Wales, and that's basically what they were trying to do here, was keep the marauding Welsh out, because when William the Conqueror came in, there was resistance all across the country. East Anglia, it was in the north of England, the Welsh. Nobody wanted this guy to succeed, and the way he succeeded obviously is building all these defensive positions, and also the churches. In a way, building the churches was just making a point that they weren't here just for 10 minutes. They intended to stay, they intended to rule the country, and of course that's what they did. You know, we went through generations of them. So here's the other fireplace. So 2 fireplaces, a big hall round here, and accommodation, and the troops and everybody else that was involved in holding this position. And because of that, around this area built up a whole community. It's gone now. The church remains and a few old buildings remain, but the rest of it has disappeared. People have moved further into Hereford, I guess. You know, that's what happens. But you know, it would have been a thriving place. And if you look across here, a lot of this was hand dug. This wasn't natural. This was people moving earth around to give themselves defensive positions that they could protect by funneling any attackers into a smaller area. Because the last thing you want is, if you're being attacked, you don't want them spreading out and coming at you from all sides. So you have to kind of engineer it so that you force them into that funnel. Now, I don't know what this is actually, but it's been carved. It's very deliberate, isn't it, if you look at that? And I reckon that's to carry water. Now, whether it's carrying water from the inside out, in other words, some kind of drainage, I don't think it was a loo. So I think it falls to the outside. So whatever was happening, something was being poured out through there, I reckon. So when you look at that, it's pretty good, isn't it? 1,000 years. And do you think the people who built this would have had no idea that it was going to end up on YouTube? So here's another one, so carefully made and angled to the back that they must have had a purpose, and whether that was to drain leaks, I don't know. Anybody got any ideas? Anybody watching this know what these are? I'd be really interested to know. So this area here, there's only a couple of houses left here, but at one time this was a thriving medieval community, and it was a cattle market here. Basically, you were standing in a market which was busy and people coming from all around. So eventually people got bored with living here and moved into Hereford. But the castle was kept for quite a long time, but eventually it was destroyed by Cromwell's guys, basically coming in during the Civil War and decided, let's destroy it so nobody can use it as a defensive position. So it's clearly not a conservation area around here, or they don't control everything that strictly, because if you look at that chimney, that's built on top of the old stone chimney, and they decided they only needed that one flue, so they just popped a brick one on top of it, which nothing wrong in my opinion doing that. It's part of the evolution of the building. I think we should grass them up. But it's so funny, isn't it? It's so inconsistent between one area and another. You've got people who enforce all kinds of stupid rules, like you can't put underfloor heating in your house if it's a listed building, even though nobody's going to come inside and see it, and once it's done you wouldn't even know you've got underfloor heating, but they still say no, you can't do that, it's sacrilege, which is crazy. Am I ranting?
You're ranting so much the SAS are flying in to get you now.
The SAS, well, I wonder where they are. I wonder where their headquarters is. Maybe it's here.